Hello, welcome back to the Eric Helpline Podcast. I'm Gina, and we've got a bit of a different day today because it's just you and me, Sarah.
I know. This is great.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you again.
You too.
For anyone who's not listened before, Sarah's our Head of Family Services here at Eric. Can you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I'm the Head of Family Services. So I oversee the running of the Helpline, which is our free helpline for parents and carers. I'm kind of responsible for all the other ways that we support families, so free webinars and these podcasts too.
And very grateful we are too. Before we begin today, I just want to give a shout out to all the parents who've contacted us. Parents, carers, school nurses, Erin, James, Jessica, Lindsay, thank you so much for all your messages. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, or you can email web@eric.org.uk. All the information and resources that we mention in this episode can be found on our website, eric.org.uk. Right, let's get stuck in, Sarah.
Okay.
Today we're going to be talking about bedwetting. So can you tell us a bit as an intro of what bedwetting is and why does it occur?
So bedwetting is a medical condition, and it's the good news is that treatment is available for children from the age of 5, and it's important for us to sort of acknowledge that bedwetting, because it's a medical condition, it's nobody's fault.
And why does it happen?
There are a variety of reasons. And so, when people call us on the helpline, we work through these reasons methodically. So there are 3 main reasons, but there are other factors that can contribute, such as constipation.
Right. And who can it affect?
So it can affect anyone. As I said, it's classed as bedwetting once children are over the age of 5. And so, and it might be that children have never been dry at night. And there's also instances where perhaps children have been dry for a time and then they start bedwetting.
Right, so it could happen at any point, really, in a child's life.
Yeah.
And what are some of the most common reasons for bedwetting?
So the first one that we always talk about on the helpline, which I think can throw people a bit, is, if you call us and say, my child's wetting the bed, the first thing we'll say is, well, what's their poo like? So because we need to rule out constipation.
Right, that's not the question I thought you would ask.
No, I know, but it is, because actually, if you think about it, the full bowel can press on the bladder and it can cause it to squeeze when it shouldn't. So even if constipation is not the main reason for bedwetting, it can mask what the real reasons are. And so from there, we've then got 3 main reasons. So it might be that your bladder can't stretch enough to hold all the wee at night. We tend to call that a small bladder capacity. It might be that your brain doesn't recognise the signals of a full bladder during sleep. We call that poor arousability. And the other 3rd reason is that you may have low levels of the hormone, which tells our kidneys to concentrate the wee during sleep. That hormone is called vasopressin.
Right, so it could be any one of those things.
Or more than one.
Right.
It can be more than one. So, yeah.
Okay, so lots to think about.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what's the difference between primary bedwetting, secondary bedwetting, and sudden onset bedwetting? I've read about these and I wasn't sure what the differences were.
Yeah, and if you're ever unsure, then do have a look at the main bedwetting page of the website, which has got so much helpful advice on. Primary bedwetting is where a child's never been dry at night. So that's quite a clear-cut one. Secondary bedwetting is where the child's been dry for 6 months or more and then starts bedwetting. And sudden onset bedwetting could occur at any time. So it would be in a child that's been dry for a long time and then suddenly starts wetting the bed. And with secondary and the sudden onset bedwetting, we do highly recommend that actually the first thing you do is speak to a GP, because children need to be checked for any underlying reasons as to why this wetting has started. And then, the treatment generally then would be the same, but the key factor really is to think about, what's causing this, and double check for urinary tract infection, check for even for type 1 diabetes.
And it's exhausting, isn't it, for the parents and for the child? Nobody's getting a good night's sleep when somebody's wetting the bed.
It's exhausting, and also, it's quite isolating as well. As children get older, they become more aware that this is happening to them, and they worry about things like going to sleepovers and residentials, and so it can be very isolating, and we really get that. And I think the key message from parents who contact us is that shame and embarrassment, and we don't want anyone to feel that, because treatment's available. There's so much you can do.
That's great to hear, and we don't want anyone suffering in silence, do we?
No, definitely not.
Can we talk a bit about managing bedwetting day to day?
Yeah.
Because obviously these things take time, don't they?
Yeah.
In the meantime, how are we supposed to be managing bedwetting day to day?
I think we have to remind ourselves really that, we're doing the best we can. It's very difficult. It's difficult for parents. It's difficult for children. And so let's do the best we can. First of all, we need to make sure that the bladder and bowel are healthy. So that's checking for constipation, making sure that's treated. And the next thing is drinking. So we really need to drink 6 to 8 cups of water-based fluid per day, spread evenly through the day. One thing I would say is that quite often, if children are at school, then they might drink a little bit before they go to school, then they probably don't drink much during the school day, then they may well drink loads when they get in from school. That's not teaching the bladder to really stretch, nicely and empty regularly through the day. So if we can spread those drinks out, a couple before school, make sure you have a couple of drinks during the school day, and then a couple more after school. Stop drinking 1 hour before bed, but no more than that, because strong wee can irritate the bladder too. So we have to think about all those things. We want a relaxed wee before bed. If you're not going straight to sleep, then you could have another wee just before going to sleep, as long as it's half an hour more, between those. Boys, sit down to wee, definitely, right. And make sure that we are relaxing, feet on a step.
And why is that? Why is it important for boys to sit down and wee?
Because a couple of reasons, really. They're more likely to relax, which means that bladder is going to empty more fully, because we need to be able to relax to be able to let wee and poo out. So that's one reason. The bladder is also in a better position for emptying if boys sit down to wee. And then the third reason, which is my favourite, is that they're more likely to realise they need a poo while they're there. So that's generally why we recommend that boys sit.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and a couple of other reasons that we would say, or other things that we would say for that day-to-day management, just think about, where is your child sleeping? If they're on a top bunk, how easy is it for them to get down during the night if they did need a wee? Maybe make sure they're on the bottom bunk. If you're in a townhouse, is it a flight of stairs to get down to the loo? Could you put a potty and a torch in the bedroom? Things like that. And the final thing is, reward them for what they can control. So don't reward them for a dry bed, because it's not within their control. But if you can reward them for drinking, for changing their pyjamas if they're wet, those kind of things. Really helpful.
Great. And another thing on your obstacles point is things on the floor.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
I remember my daughter having the hop around all the soft toys, and the Legos in the middle of the night. Ow!
Yeah, we've all done that.
So I said, this is why you keep your room tidy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Doubly important if you need a wee in the night.
Yeah.
So how can you stop children from wetting the bed if parents are looking for solutions?
Well, I think the main thing to think about really is that, we do need to get children assessed by a GP. So, as I said, treatment's available from the age of 5. The treatment will really depend upon the reason. So our key focus here is to work out what is the reason for the wetting. First of all, rule out constipation. We need to make sure that that's checked, diagnosed, treated by GP if necessary. And then what we would do is we would recommend that you complete a nighttime diary, which is available on our website, and then take that along to the GP. You can discuss that with the GP, and actually then that's how you work out what the reason is for the wetting, and the treatment will completely depend on that. So you wouldn't use a bedwetting alarm necessarily if the reason was that there were low levels of the hormone vasopressin. So we have to make sure that we're matching that as best we can.
Right, so by keeping that diary of what's happening, you're able to give the GP as full a picture as possible.
Absolutely, because we're thinking about what time does the wetting happen, how much wetting is there, and things like, does the wee smell strong? If the wee smells strong, then you might think, oh, perhaps there is enough of that hormone, but you can't just look at that alone. You have to think about the volume of the wetting, the time. Is it happening more than once in the night? And so it can be, doing the nighttime diary can mean a few sleepless nights, but you might be getting those anyway. So,
Right.
so that's, but doing that nighttime diary is the first step really towards working out what's going on and then getting the right treatment for your child.
So it helps to have that information.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit about managing bedwetting away from home? You've touched on it earlier with sleepovers and residentials and things like that. But have you got any tips for managing, if you have got a child who's a bedwetter and they're going to be away from home, what advice would you give?
Well, I think first of all, we need to think about that assessment with the GP, doing the nighttime diary, working out what the reason is. And then I think we just have to consider making life as easy as possible for yourself. So, for example, if you were going on holiday, what we would normally say is generally with bedwetters, don't lift them during the night. So that is when you take them and put them on the toilet when you go to bed. We would normally say don't do that because
They call
it
that a dream
encourages
wee, don't
a
they?
dream wee or a sleep wee, because actually you might think they're awake, but they're not really awake. So, however, an exception to that is if you're on holiday and you're worried and you need to keep the bed dry, then do it. Just make life as easy as you can. Make sure you get lots of bedding protection. If children are going for sleepovers or residentials, think about the products that you can get, and you can be a bit savvy with this. If they've got a sleeping bag, you can get a sleeping bag liner. Have a look on our shop, and that's really good because then that's the easy bit that you can pull out and wash, and it will protect the sleeping bag. Other things, give the children a few pairs of matching pyjama bottoms. So if they're wet, then no one's going to know, because if you've got 3 pairs of black pyjama bottoms, no one will know that you're wearing different pyjama bottoms the next night.
That's a good tip. They all look the same.
They all look the same. Yeah. And one parent said to me on the helpline that what they do is actually they put a couple of spare pull-ups in their child's sleeping bag so that they can change them while they're in the sleeping bag. And also speak to your doctor, because there is medication that you would give in certain circumstances for bedwetting, and it can be used on sort of occasions like residentials and sleepovers and things, but you'd need to check first and speak to your GP about that.
So what would I do if my child's wetting during the day as well as at night time?
The first thing we would do is we would always address the daytime wetting before we look at the nighttime wetting. So we need to be sure that children are dry during the day, and then we can look at that.
So are the treatments the same for all of those reasons?
No, the treatment completely depends upon the reason. So that's why we're really focused on doing the nighttime diary and speaking to the GP to get that assessment. So, for example, if the reason is poor arousability, so that's when the brain isn't recognising the signals of a full bladder during sleep, then the best treatment for that is actually a bedwetting alarm. And for example, if the reason is low levels of the hormone vasopressin, then the treatment would be a medication called desmopressin that would be discussed with your GP. And you can find information on bedwetting alarms and on desmopressin on the website. And then if it's a small functional bladder capacity, I would say you're possibly likely to be seeing some daytime wetting as well. And we'd really be working on drinking to start with and having a closer look at our bladders page on the website.
So it really depends on what that cause is, which is why the nighttime diary is so important.
It absolutely does. And I think we have to bear in mind as well that, we need to be a little bit flexible with this, because there can be more than one of those reasons for bedwetting. There might be poor arousability and low levels of vasopressin. And actually, we just need to treat the main reason first, whatever presents as the main reason. But then we have to think about, is a bedwetting alarm the right treatment for a child with additional needs who might really struggle with that going off during the night? We do have alarms that do flashing lights or vibrations as well, but there might be times where you try something different instead. So we have to be flexible, but we really do need to know what the reason is.
Great, that's really helpful to know. One thing we haven't talked about yet is the emotional impact. So it'd be really good to find out, how do you talk to a child about bedwetting?
It's really important to get to understand how they feel about it and, to reassure them that it's actually quite common. The difficulty is no one's talking about this in the playground. Parents aren't talking about this at the gates, and this increases those feelings of isolation and shame. I would say, look at some of our resources together with your child, show them the bedwetting detective video and get them on board, because actually any treatment that you undertake with your child for bedwetting, they really need to be motivated for it to be able to work. Because if you're using a bedwetting alarm, you need to explain all of that to them first, show them how it works, have a little practice during the day so that they get used to the sound. And then you need to be very clear with them about what your expectation is. What do they do when the alarm goes off? Do they get up? Do they go for a wee? Do they change their pajamas? All of those things. So children need to understand. And I think, show them the website, help to reassure them that they're not alone.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, isn't it? That they know they're not alone.
Yeah, and we are here to help.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can parents get further information on this? Can you recommend us your top 3 resources for bedwetting?
Okay, so my favourite, best resource really is our advice sheet for nighttime wetting. So that's the key resource that we will send to parents and carers on our website. A short video to watch with your children is our bedwetting detective. That basically is an animation which shares those 3 main reasons for wetting. And then something really helpful as well that I would share. Am I allowed to make it 4? Actually, because I'd like to add one.
We might just allow it this time.
Okay, definitely. I would want everyone to have the nighttime diary, because it's such an important tool for working out what the reason is for the wetting. And also watch our bedwetting webinar, because that's so much more detailed than we could do in a phone call or anything like that. So the bedwetting webinar, we do live webinars several times a year, but you will always find a recording of the webinar on our website, so that's a must.
Great, really. And those are free to access as well.
Absolutely,
so you can
free.
Find those on eric.org.uk. Wow, we've been through so much information today, Sarah. I feel like I'm an expert on bedwetting now.
You are.
Although I'm sure there's lots more to learn. But if you need any more support or advice, you can contact our helpline via the website eric.org.uk. Thanks again for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, Sarah, so we talked about bedwetting, we talked about the causes and how to treat it. Can we have a look at some of the products we've got in the Eric shop that can help?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we have a range of bedwetting alarms in the shop. We have some that come with clothing. We have wireless alarms. We have sensor alarms with a body-worn sensor. We also have these amazing sleeping bag liners, which I mentioned earlier on in the podcast. These are fantastic. And I think you've got something there as well.
Yeah, so when you're out and about, if your child tends to pee in their sleep and they doze off in the car, this is really handy seat liner. Makes life much easier, let me tell you. And also, we have a selection of books, including this one. We have books for children and adults that can help you talk through the issues connected with bedwetting. So head over to the Eric shop for more details on all of these items.